Anti-accountability Ottawa School Board trustee Nili Kaplan-Murth has now come out as anti-Christian. Who's shocked? Not me. Nili Kaplan-Murth also wants to make protests illegal near schools. Of course, not all protests, just the ones she doesn't like. Today, I'll show you what Nili Kaplan-Murth has been up to since we first launched our petition at firenili.com. Do you remember our previous reporting on Nili Kaplan-Murth? She's the mask-obsessed doctor who gained public notoriety the first time for appearing in a remote TV interview wearing a mask, sitting in her office alone. But being the sort of control freak that wants the public to wear a mask forever, well, that also lends itself to being the sort of control freak who wants to be deeply involved in what somebody else's kids are able to do and learn. And you wouldn't want parents to be involved in any of that decision-making process, would you? So Nili Kaplan-Murth ran and was elected to the Ottawa Carleton District School Board, the OCDSB. And that's where this little bitty taste of quasi-municipal power went straight to Nili Kaplan-Murth's COVID hypochondriac head. You can see all of our reporting on her and sign the petition at firenili.com. But here's the Reader's Digest version. When concerned parents started showing up at school board meetings, as is their right to do, to hold their elected officials to account, Nili instead started silencing them in person.
I'm going to read from my notes. Thank you. My name is Nick Morabito. I'm a father of 4 children in the school board at 3 schools. My daughters are 10, 12. My sons are 14 and 16. The 6 of us have lived in Manotick for 10 years, and I grew up in Canada. I became aware a few weeks ago that trans students, in particular students that were assigned a male gender at birth, are allowed to use the same bathroom unsupervised as my 12-year-old daughter. Having a 14-year-old boy and having been a 14-year-old boy before, and as a male, knowing how sexually driven a male's body is at the age of 13 onwards, this did not sit well with me. I wasn't present at the board meeting that pushed this policy through, and I can't figure out when this was done. My oldest friends can attest to my belief in the safety and inclusivity of all people. I always have. But this is about having appropriate and safe boundaries for progression and doing things in line with the parental community's wishes.
I'm sorry, Mr. Morabito, on the grounds that this creates an unsafe environment for people who identify as gender diverse, I'm going to have to ask you to end your delegation.
How does this provide an unsafe environment? Can anyone answer me that? What? Should not
See,
answer.
that's what they do.
We're going to take a 2-minute recess.
Cowards, honestly.
So then the parents took to change.org to start an online petition to get rid of Nili for her anti-accountability, anti-free speech, anti-parent actions. In fact, parents started 2 separate petitions, and Nili and her allies on the school board cry-bullied all the way to change.org to have both petitions taken down. So I started my own uncancelable petition to give parents a voice that you can still sign at firenili.com. But being addicted to social media engagement and controlling other people, well, that's a hard habit to kick, especially for Nili. So Nili's back, although she, of course, never really went away, did she? Now she doesn't like Christians and Christmas and people who express peaceful protest in a free society. Let me show you this. Nili's been sharing CBC articles to her Twitter account about what CBC alleges is some sort of organized Christian conspiracy to advocate for freedom and being left alone, and for Christians to, wait for it, become engaged in the political realm through candidacy and activism. Those maniacs. Apparently, according to CBC and possibly Kaplan-Murth, the political realm is a playing field where people who accept Jesus Christ as their personal savior have no business being on. That playing field should be a place where censorious mask enthusiasts and proponents of gender theory should be allowed to play, and no one else. And as recently as Monday of this week, Kaplan-Murth asks on her Twitter account, "Why Christmas? I don't know, because it's the birthday of Jesus, but okay." Now, to offer context, the city of Ottawa is providing an extra allowance for garbage on Christmas, which prompted Nili to ask, why Christmas? And she went on to tweet, Christmas should not be a free pass to consume and produce excess waste. If we're concerned about the environment, you know this. Imagine looking at the joy of the Christmas season and the first thing you see is the carbon footprint of it all. Now, when True North reached out to Kaplan Mirth for comment, she accused them of anti-Semitism because of course she did. But Nili wasn't done because you see there are 7 days in every week. So each one of them is a new opportunity to be a tyrannical, foolish weirdo. And so now Nili's calling for protest bans around schools for, quote, safety reasons. She's doing this to quell a parents' rights protest headed up by children's rights activist Billboard Chris and youngster Josh Alexander. Look at this. This is why we need safety zones around schools. There are anti-LGBTQ protesters from the US planning to show up outside of Ottawa, Canada schools June 9th. It puts students and staff and community at real risk. Billboard Chris is Canadian. I think he's from British Columbia. Josh Alexander is an Ontario student who was kicked out of school for protesting boys being allowed into girls' washrooms. Nili doesn't want to ban protests to stop Americans from coming. She wants to ban protests to stop Canadians from holding their school boards accountable. And she wants the provincial government to do it now instead of just her acting by fiat at the school board meetings to silence people. And I imagine if students walked out to protest the garbage produced by Christmas gift giving, Nili'd be all for it. Because again, it's not about the protest, it's about what the protest is about for her. This lady's out of control. She needs to fire herself. I don't think she has the appropriate level of emotional resiliency to be on the school board, but also what she's doing is so anti-Canadian, it's insane. Now, you might not be in Ottawa, but you probably do believe in peaceful protests. You probably believe in holding our politicians to account, whether the politicians like it or not. And you probably believe that Canada is a pluralistic society where our religious holidays should not be looked upon as garbage creators, because that's actual bigotry. Now, if you agree with me, please sign our petition at firenili.com, and I will make sure it gets to Nili. Nili thinks she can silence parents, protesters, and anybody else who wants to hold her accountable. Well, I'm giving you a voice. Her cry bullying isn't going to work on me. For Rebel News, I'm Sheila Gunn-Reid. To send a message to out-of-control TV doctor turned school board trustee Nili Kaplan Mirth that she needs to resign because her actions are censorious and anti-Canadian, please go to firenili.com.